For anyone who's been involved in the piracy community, KickassTorrents or Cat is one of the most classic torrenting sites in the world, right up there with the Pirate Bay. In fact, in 2015, Cat became the most popular file-sharing website in the world as the Pirate Bay suffered from legal consequences. Unfortunately for Cat, their time at the top didn't last too long as they started to experience their own legal issues soon after. Nevertheless, Cat was an extremely popular option amongst pirates, allowing them to easily secure their spot in the Hall of Infamy. But as we saw with the Pirate Bay founders and Mega Uploads founder, prosecutors and copyright holders aren't exactly kind to such founders. After all, New Zealand sent their anti-terrorist squad against Mega Uploads founder, and Sweden chased the Pirate Bay founders across the world. So there's no doubt that if you found one of these sites, you want to remain anonymous, and that's exactly what Cat's founder tried to do. But prosecutors did eventually find out who he was, and here's what happened next. Taking a look back, the story of KickassTorrents circles back to a man named Artem Wallin, or at least that's what prosecutors allege. Ethnically, Artem was Ukrainian, but it looks like he lived out most of his life in Poland. It's not clear when exactly Artem was born, but given that he was 30 years old when he was arrested in 2016, we can deduct that he was born in 1986 or 1987. Anyway, it looks like Artem was heavily involved in the piracy community during his teenage years, and it didn't take him very long to switch from being a user to being a host, as Artem spotted a business opportunity within the piracy scene. Similar to YouTube and Instagram, if you hosted a piracy site, you could display ads that could drive in revenue. And as you'll see later, for Cat, this added up to quite a bit of revenue. Considering the potential, Artem didn't waste any time and he quickly put his coding skills to work. Soon after, in November of 2008, Artem launched KickassTorrents. Initially, it looked like Artem tried his best to avoid issues with the authorities. Cat proudly claimed that they complied with the DMCA and that they would remove copyright-infringing torrents as soon as they were notified. But in reality, this wasn't exactly the case. Given the context of the site, it didn't take long for users to start uploading copyrighted content and for copyright holders to start contacting Cat, but they were hit with the same response every single time. Greetings, your request has been reviewed, but cannot be processed due to one or more of the following reasons. Most of these reasons were complete and utter BS. Reason 4, for example, was that there were more than 30 torrents mentioned in the claim email. If Cat was legitimately trying to comply, addressing such a claim would be a top priority. But Cat was intentionally avoiding claims with a large list of torrents, probably because they wanted to draw out the takedown process and minimize how many torrents they lost with each takedown. Cat was able to get away with such outright incompliance for many years as prosecutors had much bigger fish to fry. But as soon as they took down Mega Upload and the Pirate Bay, prosecutors turned their focus to KickassTorrents. Initially, prosecutors started off pretty light against Kickass. They didn't know who was behind the site, and honestly, I don't think they cared. They just wanted to take down the website and stop the spread of copyrighted material. So, in February of 2013, they started working with internet service providers to block access to Cat. The High Court in London ordered ISPs to block people from accessing KickassTorrents and 2 other torrent sites. The ISPs did comply and block access, but every time they blocked access to one domain of Kickass, Kickass just moved to another domain. They moved from ka.tt to kickass.to to kickass.so to kickastorrents.im to cat.cr and so on and so forth. Clearly, prosecutors couldn't take down the website through ISPs, but they were able to force Cat to constantly switch domains. This meant that most people didn't know what the latest domain was off the top of their heads. They had to Google KickassTorrents to find the latest link. Considering this, the Motion Picture Association of America, or the MPAA, decided to work with Google to take down Cat. They asked Google to remove the correct Kickass link from Google search results. They also worked with Steam to prevent the correct link from being shared on Steam Chat. This strategy was actually decently effective, as this resulted in many pirates stumbling upon malicious copycat sites that were filled with malware and viruses. And this was the perfect excuse for Chrome and Firefox to completely block access to Cat even if you had the correct link. If you tried to access Cat through these browsers in late 2015, you got a message suggesting that they blocked access to the site because they don't want you to download a virus. It was definitely not because they were being pressured by copyright holders. They just wanted to look out for your best interests. Jokes aside though, we all know why they blocked access. In 2016, Chrome and Firefox changed their excuse to phishing concerns, but soon enough, neither of them wanted to play these raids anymore. so they opened up access and stepped out of the way. By this point, it was clear that Cat wasn't just a bug that prosecutors could squash and move on. Cat had evolved into being the world's largest file-sharing site, so prosecutors decided that it was time to go for the host. By this point, the FBI had spent years trying to unsuccessfully take down Cat, so they decided to escalate things to the real top dogs, the IRS. Whether it be Al Capone or the Wolf of Wall Street, it's clear that the one entity that you never want to piss off is the IRS. Many have pissed off the FBI and gotten away with it for years, but almost no one has escaped the IRS, and this was no different for Artem. The IRS didn't care that Artem was causing billions of dollars worth of lost revenue for copyright holders, but they did care that Artem was causing losses for the IRS. You see, Artem made money off displaying ads on Cat, and many of these advertisers were American. Yet, Artem wasn't paying sales tax or income tax on this revenue, which was a fatal mistake. In March of 2016, the IRS got an undercover agent to inquire about an ad on Cat. The IRS agent was able to get in contact with a Cat employee named Mr. White. Mr. White informed the agent that Cat charges $300 per ad per day and gave the agent payment details to a Latvian bank. The agent went ahead and bought a 5-day ad in order to gain the trust of Cat and potentially get more details. Clearly, the IRS had motives behind paying Cat, but technically, this does also mean that the IRS supported Cat with $1,500. Anyway, shortly after, the IRS agent contacted Mr. White again to buy a more expensive ad. This time, he was looking at a banner ad that cost $1,000 to $3,200 per day. It's not clear if the IRS actually made the purchase, but they were able to uncover a new bank account based in Estonia. Using these details in conjunction with the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, investigators were able to obtain all the banking records of these two accounts. This helped the IRS figure out that Artem was making bank off of Cat. At the peak, Cat was pulling in nearly $17 million in annual revenue. The IRS wanted their cut, and fortunately for them, the bank accounts led to more clues. Investigators were able to uncover that the operation was being hosted out of Chicago and that the servers were located in Canada. But the most important piece of evidence they found was Artem's IP address. They didn't know who the IP address belonged to, but the walls were quickly closing in on Artem. Artem had no idea that prosecutors were so close to uncovering his identity, so he continued on with his daily life. And this included purchasing media from the iTunes store. Ironically, the owner of the largest piracy website in the world was paying for his own media. I guess that he felt that if you had the money, you should pay for it. I'm not sure, but this ironically ended up being the root of his demise. You see, investigators were working with a bunch of companies to track down the IP address, one of which was Apple. And when Artem made a purchase on the iTunes store using his Apple ID and his IP address, prosecutors were quickly able to identify him. Facebook was also able to provide evidence that it was in fact Artem and the same IP address that was operating Cat's official Facebook account. And on July 20, 2016, the Department of Justice proudly announced that they were able to uncover the identity of Artem and that Poland police had arrested him. They were also able to shut down Cat's proxy servers and officially take down the website. Prosecutors went ahead and stacked down every copyright infringement and money laundering charge they could think of. And these were pretty severe given that Cat had distributed $1 billion worth of media. According to Artem's lawyer, Ira Rotkin, they were looking to charge up to 20 years for the money laundering and up to 5 years for each count of copyright infringement. Rotkin did clarify that he highly doubted that all these charges would actually go through, but worst case scenario, Artem could have been looking at decades in jail. To make things worse, Artem was suffering from extreme back pain and had to be taken to the hospital. Artem describes that during his trip to the hospital, he was escorted by 4 policemen with machine guns. And one of the guards told him that they heard that he committed 3 murders. Hearing this, Artem knew that this was going to be more of a criminal lawsuit than a civil lawsuit, and he had no intention of sticking around for the verdict. As you might have already guessed, as soon as bail was posted, Artem paid the amount and fled the country. The bail amount was surprisingly only $108,000. For someone who is making tens of millions per year, forfeiting even $10 million would have been an easy price to pay for freedom. But luckily for Artem, he only had to pay a little over $100,000. It's not clear how exactly Artem left Poland given that his passport was confiscated. But given his wealth, I'm sure he was easily able to find a first-class smuggler. Anyway, on August 26, 2020, the Polish Ministry of Justice confirmed that Artem had fled the country, and that extradition proceedings would no longer be continuing in Poland. His legal team withdrew from the case after they lost contact with Artem, and the Artem prosecution has since been put on hold. In other words, as long as Artem is never caught, the case will never reach a verdict, and Artem can more or less live a free life in some non-extraditing country. As for KickassTorrents today, there are many sites trying to emulate the original, but the consensus seems to be that none of them are as good as the original. Also, one of the main reasons that Kickass became so popular was because the Pirate Bay was taken down, so naturally, everyone flocked to the second best option. But with the Pirate Bay basically becoming immortal, there seems to be little need for anything else. Still, many miss the glory days of Cat and the community behind it. While Cat was not able to become immortal like the Pirate Bay, there's no doubt that Cat will permanently be remembered as a legend in the piracy community. Do you guys think it's moral to pirate? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if Kickass is nostalgic for you. And of course, consider checking out our international channels to watch our videos in other languages, and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.